Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Photography Parlour Google Hangout on birth photography. I'm Rosie Parsons, and I run the Photography Parlour. I'm a wedding photographer, and last year gave birth to triplets by C-section, which was all photographed beautifully by Ashley Taylor from Taylor Barnes Photography. So I've got first-hand experience in birth photography, but on the side of being a mum. Birth photography is a really hot topic. It's been the subject of debate in the Daily Mail recently, where I was surprised to see a lot of anti-birth photography comments. And then what inspired me to create this hangout today was when Elisa Clare posted on Facebook about whether she should have a birth photographer. The response was phenomenal. So there's obviously a lot of interest and controversy about this area of photography, which I thought was definitely worth getting a group of us together to chat about. This is the first live group hangout we've done on the Photography Parlour, so if there's any hiccups, I hope you'll excuse them. I've turned on Q&A, so I think you should be able to ask us a question live while we're on air. Feel free to try it out and see if we get your message. I firstly need to let you know that sadly Ashley, who shot the birth of my triplets, is feeling poorly this morning, so she's had to drop out. But we have an amazing lineup of everybody else and different people joining us all the time, so we'll go through and get everybody to introduce themselves one by one and tell us a little bit about their backgrounds and how they're interested or involved with birth photography. So over to the panel. If we start perhaps with Kate, that would be great.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So a quick introduction, Rosie.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm Kate Griffin. I'm a family portrait photographer primarily, based in Surrey, but I cover London. But 3 years ago now, I shot my first home birth, and I absolutely fell in love with it and wanted to become one of the first professional photographers in the UK to offer birth photography services. So trying to get it to work, trying to encourage people to consider it, or perhaps just challenge what their initial assumptions might be to having a photographer at that birth and what that a photographer at their birth and what that means in terms of, you know, feeling watched or captured, but actually what you get out of it at the end and the end product.
Great. Okay, over to Yasmin. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us about you.
Hi, my name's Yasmin, and I come from Guernsey in the Channel Islands. I've been a wedding and portrait photographer for 20 years, actually more than, but I'll stop at saying 20 is enough. I have 4 children, I photograph newborns all the time, and I'm also a photographer for Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. I haven't photographed a birth, but I would be very interested in doing so, and I'm here this morning to find out more about it and the pitfalls and highlights of doing so.
Thanks very much. Okay, over to Hayley. Can you tell us about you?
I am the classic momtographer who had my first baby and photographed him loads and completely fell in love with photography, and then photographed all my friends' children, and that led me to starting my own business. Now have 2 children, didn't have their births photographed, and obviously didn't do that myself, as I was otherwise engaged. I have a friend who is going to have a home birth. Her baby is due in the any day now, and I am hopefully going to be there to photograph it for the first time. I'm really excited.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, we go over to Evie.
Oh yeah, sorry, I lost you because I've never done this before, but it's
fine. It's fine.
Yeah, what I said in the email, I'm Evie. I'm primarily a nanny and worked in childcare a long time, but do photography mainly for my nieces and my friends' children, and hopefully my own if I have any. That'd be cool. And yeah, what else? I say.
Would you be interested in sort of having your own sort of children?
Oh, definitely. I'd love. I've always been interested in it, and when I've told people, they've been like, "Oh no, why would you want to do that?" So it's difficult to meet people that are actually. It's a good idea.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. And then over to Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky. So I am Bambino Art Photography and UK birth photographer. I photographed my first birth 3.5 years ago, roughly it was. So I think around the same time that Kate started as well, and I think we obviously both had the same idea, both saw from Australia and America birth photographers over there. I've got 4 children, and my first one we didn't have any photos of. I was really, really poorly when I had him with preeclampsia. I can't remember the birth at all. And then for our other 3 children, my husband, who's also a photographer, photographed them for me, so that, because I had sections, so always assumed I would never get to see one of my children actually physically being born, although I did end up, but that's a different story. Basically, so I've got the difference between not being, you know, having a section and not being able to see your child being born, to actually being able to see it afterwards, and then that then inspired me to go and start photographing births for other people. So I've then also seen it from that side as well. So I've done about 15 births now, I think it is, roughly, but I've done home births, hospital births, twin births, water births, a nice selection of them. So
brilliant, that's great.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Okay, so Evie, I think you had a question about opposition, didn't you? Do you want to share that with everybody and see if anyone...
I mean, I don't have any children, so I don't really feel like I've got any right to talk on the subject, but I just wondered how you people that have done that as mothers and as photographers, how you've dealt with opposition and...
Oh, we think we've lost them. We've lost them, yeah. But the question was sort of how, it's obviously quite a controversial topic. So how do photographers and mums kind of deal with the opposition that of different people's views and maybe the ignorance and stuff? Maybe if you start over with Kate for that question from Evie.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear her say that because she doesn't have children, she feels like she can't have an opinion. I don't have any children. No plans to, but I absolutely fell in love with the idea of birth photography because I suppose I was working as a family photographer. I was doing maternity, I was doing newborn, but in my style I'm not really a sort of baskets and headbands newborn photographer. I'm much more sort of documentary style, and I realised that in my work there was this really big missing gap of the family story, which was really important, you know. So we'd go from mum and bump, and then to baby, and then there was this thing in the middle that was missing. And as Becky mentioned earlier, there were a couple of birth photographers in the States who I saw and followed and fell in love with the work that they did and the way that they told the stories. And so I would say that the biggest thing that I do to get over somebody's initial reaction, which is invariably, oh my God, no, I can't imagine anything worse, is I show them the work. I show them the photography, because then they can immediately see that it's not about a sort of National Geographic, you know, gritty, worrying story of like knife edge life or death thing. It's not about that at all. It's about telling the story that occurs naturally in a really, really beautiful way. So I'm not looking to get gritty pictures that will sell a news story, which is exactly what the sort of Daily Mail amongst us believe that birth photography is. It's this sort of controversial attempt to get attention. What I do is the total opposite to that. So whenever I hear people say, "Oh, it's only the very vain that would have it done," or what, you know, people must stop to pose and put makeup on, nothing could be further from the truth. The people that I've worked for and with are the total opposite to that. Usually they would, most of the time they haven't even ever had a family session before.
Yeah.
But what they really value is being able to hold that story in their hands after it's happened, to be able to revisit it, to look back on it, and to know every stage of it, so that they can, and especially for dads as well, so that they can be absolutely in the moment of what's happening, and then they can relive that story with their partners, with their wives afterwards. So I suppose answering the original question, it's showing the work. It's a visual answer more than, you know, I can try and be as eloquent on the subject as possible, but nothing will do better than showing them the work and showing them the photography that comes out of it.
Yeah, before we go over to Becky and ask the sort of like her side of things, do you want to share some of your work with us? It's going to be really great to see that.
Yeah, okay, sure. Let me just...
Oh, we've got Liz has joined us as well. Hello, great that you could join us. That's great. So while Kate's just getting up her some examples of her work, do you want to introduce yourself, Eliza? That'd be great.
Yeah, I'm Liz from Eliza Clare Photography. I am expecting my third child at the moment. I don't do any kind of portrait work at the moment. I only really shoot weddings. If I'm quite interested in getting into the family market, probably more newborns for older family. But I wanted to listen in today because I posted on Facebook recently saying I'm quite interested in the idea of birth photography. I'm 31 weeks now, so kind of need to be deciding now, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Had a great night's sleep. Kind of completely forgot this was happening, so sorry about the state of me.
That's fine. Don't worry, that's fine. Okay, we'll just go back over to Kate now and see some examples of her work. Do you want to talk us through these, Kate?
Yeah, sure. So the way that I like to work is tell the fullest story possible, and a lot of the time that means joining the couple at home before they go into hospital. So I'll start going through the work, and then so what happens is you get to be with them through all the stages of how they feel, how what they're feeling. So we start at home, and it's about creating the story of that birth and the atmosphere of what's happening, and showing how much support is involved, especially with Dad being there, and then telling the story creatively and making sure that the photographs I take are not just concerned with. It's not just about sitting in a position and firing off shots. It's about telling the story creatively, using what you have to take beautiful images of what's going on. So if you are just after baby's born, and it's just catching those first the first moments of looking down at her baby, absolute delight, surprise, awe, joy, and all of that. Those first moments together.
That's lovely.
They're never going to see otherwise. I mean, the main thing when I was talking to people about doing this before I started, everyone that had been through it and was a mum and had children, they all said it was amazing. It was amazing. I cannot remember anything about it. So they have, all of that run up, and then they have this rush of before, and they have their baby, and those are the moments they sort of remember. But to be able to go back and show them, the stages of what's happening, and to tell it creatively and to tell it beautifully, that's what they really, really value.
That's great.
So they're
brilliant. All right, if we go over to Becky, because you've photographed them, Beth.
Sorry,
as well.
I was just smiling at those photos.
So in answer to Evie's question as well, sort of how do you find that sort of when you say that you photograph births, is that quite controversial with people, or?
Interestingly enough, I was actually going to ask first of all when Evie, when you were just saying about it, whether you were referring to what friends and family and stuff would say, or controversial as in obviously the hospitals or the midwives. So I wasn't quite sure where you were coming from to start with on that, but for both, obviously answer both of them. The doctors and midwives and obstetrician one's probably the easiest one to answer. When I first started, I found I came up with a bit of opposition from some more traditional midwives and obstetricians, and I basically kind of got Kate, you're laughing at me. Got around that by
I'm laughing because everything stopped and everyone froze.
Everyone's frozen.
I was just the only one left, and I would have to just sort of do a tap dance or something.
For anybody that wants to do birth photography that's thinking about it, I've had a lot of people that have said, "Oh, I would just say to the midwives or to the obstetricians that they're just coming in as like a birth partner," which I never did. I never wanted to do that. I wanted it to be that I was there in a professional capacity, and so I wanted to have or say from the hospital. As it turns out, my local hospital, I wrote them a couple of letters, spoke to them about it. They were a bit iffy about it to start with. I think just because it's something new, like most people, it's new, they don't understand it, they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But as soon as you show that you're professional and that you're there in a professional capacity, and obviously you're mindful of what they're doing, and the baby and the woman's the most important thing, obviously, and you're going to be out of the way when you need to be, then they've all been really, really good. And those midwives of the photos and have come for photo shoots afterwards and stuff after they've seen them. So that's that side of it. Controversy from other people. When I tell people what I do, there's always this look of "you do what" kind of thing, you know, and then you explain to them, and people kind of, even when they haven't seen images, they'll be a bit like, "Well, I don't really get what you're trying to say. Where do you stand?" kind of thing when the woman's having the baby, which is obviously the most asked question by anybody. Well, it is. It's the first thing that people ask is, "Do you stand at the foot end of the bed?" Well, no, generally I don't. But yeah, it's for me. I always kind of explain, you know, that I think it's really hard that until you've had a child, it's really, really hard to kind of to see that unless you've seen birth photography to know how you're going to feel. I've only had 3 or 4 mums that have come as first-time mums that have had birth photography. The majority of them have already had 1 child, so they know what they're going to miss by not being, because you kind of, even in the most amazing birth, that's how birth works. It kind of gets, the memory of it gets dulled over time so that you can't really remember. It's like anything. It's like, you know, like we say about your wedding day, when you photograph your wedding, you know, you have photos from that. There's always bits that you can't remember. And so I kind of just talk to people about what it is that I photograph. Like Kate said, it's not just about the moment that your baby arrives. In fact, that's probably one of the smallest moments, actually, of the whole thing. Ridiculously, I know how stupid that sounds, but, you know, it's about the build-up of labour. It's, you know, it's about your doula being there. It's about, you know, if you're at home, it's about, you know, if you're filling up the birth pool, your partner rushing around trying to do the pool for you. It's, you know, about just like, you know, your doula being there or other children that are there. It's, and then afterwards, obviously, as Kate showed some of those gorgeous images that made me all teary, it's about, you know, your partner first seeing the baby. So I think when you're pregnant, you're, you know, 99% of the time, obviously, you are already emotionally connected to your child because you're growing it. Whereas for the bloke, as much as they can be really connected, it's not in the same kind of way. So I think for men, it's like being able to capture the first moment that they see their child is just amazing. It's beautiful, and it's something that as the female, obviously, as much as you can think, "Oh, look, isn't that lovely, my husband's looking at our baby," without being mean to the men, you're obviously looking at your baby the majority of the time. So I think, as Kate said, you miss so much by, as you should be, being completely engrossed in the moment. Yeah, and I just find, as Kate said, once people look at the images, I find that a lot of the controversy goes. I've had so many people that have said that they would never have dreamt of having birth photography ever, and you tell them what you do, and without wanting to use bad words, they think it's absolutely horrendous kind of thing, you know, and oh, it's going to be really, you know, they think it's, oh my God, it's going to be awful, and it's going to be really graphic and stuff, and then they see the slideshows and they see the images, and they're like, oh, I wish I'd had that done, and, you know, literally just completely converted from seeing, you know, what it is that you do and how it's very different to the, you know, to the first image that you have in your head when you think of what a birth photographer is going to do.
Great.
I wrote a blog post about it, and I think most people just think it's going to be like, you know, a scene from One Born every minute, and there's going to be people screaming everywhere and rushing everywhere, and it's all going to be mayhem, and, you know, and it's nothing like that at all. So
great.
Yeah, I'll stop talking anyway. So
all right. I just wanted to ask Eliza. So obviously you're thinking, you know, you're not made up your mind yet what you're going to do. What were your sort of pros and cons? What were you thinking would be really nice, and what were you worried about?
I think everything about the end product will be absolutely amazing, and I want it for the end product, the photos, the memories, all of that. My concerns revolve around the practicalities of that moment. When I had my first child, Ethan, he was in hospital. It was a horrendous birth, to be honest. Really not pleasant, not nice, not fun. And then when I had Isella, it was in a midwife centre, it was in water, it was lovely, but still it's not the most dignified thing in the world, is it?
Rosie, can I answer that a little bit?
I didn't hear that, sorry.
Yeah, so Eliza was just saying that, you know, in one way it would be lovely to sort of, you know, well, it'd be lovely to have the photos and the final finished product. But the process of actually getting there can be very
I
undignified.
heard the practicality bits of it. What was the very last thing that you said, sorry?
Just how undignified labour is. You know, physically and mentally incredibly undignified, and having somebody there that you feel comfortable enough with that it's not going to hinder labour in any way. I think that's my concern.
Yeah, so if we go over to Kate first and sort of see what you...
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, so when I was talking about taking beautiful photographs of this amazing thing that's happening, I suppose I should address what I believe beautiful is. That's not posed, preened, made up. I think even in the moments where the woman is working as hard as possible, she's been in labour for 6 hours, and she's full of pain and she's full of anxiety, I still think that could be made into a beautiful moment. So when people say, oh, but I was thrashing about and terrible things happened, I don't think the birth photographers I know are not naive about the process of birth. We don't believe that it's going to be something that travels from A to Z and follows a set route and everything can be planned. It's just about knowing the stages and being prepared to document what happens as it happens. But the great thing about having a professional birth photographer is that you don't just have somebody snapping away, capturing, recording things. You have somebody there that knows how to create an image. So even in those moments where you're working really hard and labour is really difficult, I believe you can still make a beautiful image of that. And I believe that I can hand you back a memory of the labour that tells the story authentically. It's not about hiding all the bits that were really hard work and difficult and only showing the bits where we're sat up in bed and smiling afterwards. But it's about knowing how to document the birth and capture it creatively and beautifully. But again, I think we have to adjust what we believe beautiful is. Beautiful isn't necessarily perfect. A perfect model giving birth to the perfect baby in the perfect way, because that just doesn't exist. So there we go. That's my sort of...
That's good. That's good. Thanks. I know, Elisa, that you were thinking, should you have a friend? Is it better to have a friend be there, or is it better to have someone you don't know? Have you had any more thoughts on that?
Well, I was talking to a good friend of mine who does a lot of newborn photography, and she said to me, she's got 2 children, same age as my 2 children, and she did point out to me that the likelihood is I'll have 2 midwives there that I don't know, and when it comes down to it, you actually don't care. There's so much in the lead up to it. You're terrified that you're going to be embarrassed and shy, and people are going to be looking at you, and you're going to probably wet yourself, poo yourself. It's not dignified at all. But in the moment, you just don't care. It doesn't matter. And so she kind of reminded me that actually, when I'm in that moment, I probably won't even be aware of whether it's a photographer I know or don't know. And by that point, I'll have met the person. They won't be a complete stranger. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you want to be able to. That's a really big point of it. Is getting to know the people that you're working with, making sure you're a good fit, and that you can establish that element of trust. I know that for a couple of my births, the people that I was working for, I'd met them 3 times as much as they'd ever met the people, the midwives or the medical staff that were there. So by the time we got to birth, by the time we got to the labour, I was trusted and I was known to them. And the biggest compliment I get paid after it's all said and done and the images are handed over is that without fail, they say, we totally forgot you were there.
Yeah.
Because it's not like it's a family session where I'm chatting and talking to people and bringing out emotion and interaction. It's totally hands off. Once they're in the delivery room, I'm not talking to them at all. I'm sure it's the same for Becky. It's not a case where you're interacting. I don't want to be part of their birth story. I'm just capturing it. So
Sorry, Kate, can I just interrupt you there?
Yeah, of course.
I was just going to say, just regardless, because I'll forget otherwise if I don't say it now. Basically, what I was going to say is I actually have in my information that I give to the couples that I give to them, they put in their birth plan basically it's just an A4 sheet of paper with like bullet point information on for midwives, so that if they happen to go into labour and I haven't had a chance to speak to the midwife, or if I get to the labour and they are literally right in the throes of labour, so I don't have time to talk to anybody, so the midwives have a bit of information about what I do.
Right.
Basically explains about how, because of the way that cameras work, obviously you'll get this, so I just have to explain it to them in like really easy to read, very quick way that basically in the politest way possible to the midwives, please don't talk to me while I'm photographing, because I think it's really, 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 not rude, that isn't the right word, but distracting to the woman. Could you imagine being in full-blown labour and somebody having a conversation next to you? That would be horrendous, that would be awful. So I explain a little bit, basically, I'm Becky, this is what I do, I photograph the birth, the couple's asked me to be here, they've paid me money to be here, so everything that I'm doing because they want me to do it. And also explain about how, because of the way that lenses work, what they think I'm photographing a lot of the time isn't actually what I'm photographing, because you're either working more wide angle, or you're working more close up. And so, because I think a lot of the time the midwives, they feel quite protective of the woman, so they, I think they automatically think she wouldn't want you to do a photo like that, or which is obviously. So I just basically put that we've had this, we've met quite a few times, we've had a big discussion about what you want photographed, what you don't want photographed, and everything that I'm doing because you've asked me to do it, basically. So that just means that the midwives don't have to have that much interaction at all with the photographer, because we stay out of the way. And I find that's better, because I think you saying about like being, feeling like you're being watched and having somebody there, and it being, or as you said, it being undignified and stuff. I understand where you're coming from when you say that. Is it rude to say I don't agree with you? I don't mean I literally don't agree with you, but I think with birth photography, I get what you're saying about, you might be screaming and all that, all this kind of stuff. But I have to say, I've done quite a lot of births, and none of the births that I've been at have been like that. They've never been this one born every minute kind of, completely out of control. Obviously, I've been at births where women have been in substantial pain. I'm not saying that, but I almost think that birth photography could be a really, really, really amazing thing for women, empowering thing, because we have in our heads this idea of how we birthed and what we birthed like. And I think when you see it, actually, it's not like we're photoshopping all the images to make it something different. I think actually a lot of the time it is just way more beautiful than anybody knows, because all you hear is these negative stories surrounding birth and about how this awful thing happened or that awful thing happened. Whereas when you show the photos, actually you look at them and you think, actually, I was a lot more in control than what I thought I was. It was only kind of like the crowning bit and the push. Do you know what I mean? I think for the majority of it, I think we kind of make it. We make it more, I don't know what the word is, I don't want to use any of the words that they used in the paper in all those interviews they've done recently, so I'm trying to stay away from words, But I think because of things like One Born Every Minute and stuff like that on TV and in the magazines and stuff, we have an image of what birth is in our head, and I don't think it's at all like it is, or at least, maybe I've been really lucky in the 15 or so births that I've done that it hasn't been like that. I don't think I could be that lucky. I've done births at hospital where there's been like forceps, ventouse, everything, and it just isn't what the media would have you believe. And as the woman that's in the throes of labour, I know obviously you've had 2 children before, but as the woman that's in the throes of labour, I do think there's this thing to kind of not remember the bits that were the hardest, but obviously if you're in support pain, that's the bit, that's the bit that you'll remember, and then you'll remember the baby coming at the end, and you remember all those beautiful bits, but then it's the bits in the middle that are kind of lost, where actually, they're really, really beautiful. I'll get some pictures up in a minute, and
great. And just we'll have a look for those. I know that Yasmin's going.
I'm here.
Yeah, because I know Yasmin just
out. Can I ask a question to Elizabeth?
Yeah.
How would you feel, Elizabeth, if you could look back and see photographs taken in this manner of your own birth? How precious would they be?
Oh.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I don't know. Oh, I've never thought about it like that. My mum would never have done it in a million years. Never, ever. You know, I'm surprised she even let my dad in the room when I was born, let alone anybody else. So,
but if they were available to you,
yeah, I guess they would be fascinating. I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess for me, it's much more about the mother's memory than the child's. If that doesn't sound incredibly selfish, I think it's much more an experience that the mum goes through than the child. I think I'd feel slightly disconnected if I saw photos of myself being born. You know, having no memory anyway. I'm not sure.
It's a very good question, I think. I think that's a really, really good one. What about you, Yasmin? Would you like to see photos of yourself being born?
oh, I would love it. My mum was such a beautiful young woman, and I know what she was going through at that stage of her life, and I would love to have kind of shared that with her. And I think it would make me feel closer to her if I had that set of photos.
Yeah, I think it's a very lovely thing to have. Hannah, who sort of she's sort of like trying to join, but she's having problems with her Google Hangout. But she sent in a question, which, so everyone can see, which was, how did you feel photographing your first birth? So that's for the birth photographers. Hayley, I can't remember. I'm not very good at remembering what everybody's done. So can you? Have you photographed a couple of births? Did you say?
No, I'm going to.
Oh, you're going to be. Okay. Yeah. So
It's baby, so it might come really, really quickly, and I might not get there in time.
Right. Yeah. So this question will be really relevant for you as well, because you're going to be having your first, experience of photographing birth coming up. So if you go back over to Kate then, how was it photographing your first one?
It was absolutely incredible. What was wonderful is that the mum decided that she would avoid giving birth whilst Downton Abbey was on, so that was fabulous. So it wasn't during the night, and actually I got the call sort of prepare myself the night before. So she went into labour quite late on in the evening, and then I got there very sort of first thing in the morning, and by then it was already quite established. So I'm someone who hasn't had children, so I haven't had personal experience with birth. I actually adore One Born Every Minute. I know Becky's got different sort of ideas about it, but I love that programme.
I do have a big problem with One Born Every Minute. Sorry, don't mind me. I'm just moving.
So that was one of the things, another thing that sort of really got me hooked on it. I loved seeing the stories play out. I was really interested in the sort of the relationships, the family dynamics that were happening. So that's what I was there to capture. So I really didn't know what to expect, but I'd spent a lot of time getting to know the couple. I'd been really lucky in that I'd been able to join them for a couple of midwife appointments, so I knew the midwives as well. It was a home birth. And for me, it was just the most incredible experience. And I'd spoken to the midwives beforehand, and I said, look, when you know that baby's actually imminent, can we do a sign or a word or something so I can change my battery, can change my memory card and make sure I'm sort of all sorted. I think I was there for about 5 or 6 hours, and then the midwife said, hey, do what you need to do. And then the actual delivery started, and I remember I was photographing away, and then when the baby was sort of just about to come, I think I just dropped my camera down. I was just totally engrossed and totally amazed. The midwife had to say, Kate, and just back to photographing again. And it was a moment of like pure euphoria. It was amazing. It was amazing to be in that room when everything changed for that family, and the atmosphere changed in an instant once that baby was there, because these two people that were, that were partners and they'd had this life together, now they became parents, and to have this human being arrive, it was absolutely amazing. And I think that it's sort of it might be that thing that you get hooked on, that you want to be there for again and again and again. I've spoken to midwives, and that's the sort of moment that they really sort of hold on to and connect with as well. It's incredible, and it's a total honour to be there. It's it's really amazing, and so I suppose that's why I get really passionate talking about it, because I know what an incredible experience it is to be a part of that and to be capturing it for them. So for me, I was a bundle of nerves. I was stressed about missing really important things. I worried that I would get it wrong. I didn't know what sort of photographs I would produce for them. It was all a bit of a worry. But actually, if you've been working professionally for a while beforehand, your instincts kick in, and you know how you naturally work kicks in, and you're following that story, and things just, you run on adrenaline, and you capture what's happening, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life to do that. So hey, I hope you get there. I know one of my births, it was Mum's third child, and I got the call, and I was there in 20 minutes, and then it was like 5 pushes, and the baby was out. So it was a really quick labour. So I hope you get there and get to experience it, because I imagine you'll get hooked, and you want to do it again and again and again.
Right. Okay, I'm just going to, because we've only got about 2 minutes left, I'm going to go on to the next question, also by Hannah, and then get Becky to answer the next one. So the next question is, I was asked to photograph a birth this year, and the baby was then 5 weeks early, and they decided not to call as she was concerned there was more risk. So have you had that happen before, that the call doesn't come, or that it came too late? So if we're going to Becky for that?
Yeah, I'd also like to ask the same type of question, but what happens, have you ever had experience where they've had to plan in a home birth, transfer to hospital, that type of thing, or planning a vaginal birth and having a C-section, that type of thing?
Yeah, so it's when stuff changes, and how do you cope with the changes?
Shall I go, Kate? Yeah. No, I'll talk. That's fine then. Just didn't want to butt in if you were in the middle of talking.
No,
my connection's really bad. Everybody keeps freezing, so I don't know whether you're actually talking or not.
No, you talk. You answer.
No, I was going to say, for me personally, I've actually never had it where an emergency has occurred. I've had it where women have had their birth plans brought forwards and they've had cesareans, but they've known about it like a few days before. So for me, I've always known that basically it all depends on what's happening at the time. If it was that you were having a home birth and you were transferred to hospital, then I would go along to the hospital with you, and then just basically kind of wait it out in the on the sidelines just to see what was happening, because I think this, at the end of the day, there's different kinds of reasons for why you would, if you were having a home birth and you would transfer, or if you're in hospital, why you would end up having a cesarean. And I think that for the majority of the time, it's kind of, if it was a full-blown emergency, then the medical staff wouldn't let you be there anyway. So that would kind of take the decision out of your hands anyway. If it was just something, for example, like the woman was labouring at home and labour had been going on for a really long time and she was getting tired and decided she wanted to go to hospital, then obviously you just wait to see, how the woman was and stuff, and then I would probably still say to go along to the hospital, but just to see how she is and, how things are progressing. It might be that she just needs a bit, just a bit of a break, spend half an hour on her own, or if she's going to hospital to go, if she decides she wants an epidural or something, to just go and obviously, let her have her epidural or her pain relief, just give her a bit of time out on her own, and then go back and see afterwards. I'm always in constant contact with the parents, I'm sure it's cases as well, before the birth actually starts, like just text messages and stuff. So it could always be a case of, well, if dad or partner's in the room with the mom, and obviously she just falls asleep or something, then they can just text you. I've had loads of births where I've been waiting outside in the waiting room, just giving the couple just time on their own, because it is, at the end of the day, it's all about knowing how birth progresses and what's happening and stuff. And I suppose you just have to be really, really intuitive about birth and get to know birth, so really how long you have that you can be away for. I mean, you can never know these things 100%, obviously, but you can make very, very, very good guesses, and obviously talk to the midwives. If there's a doula there, talk to the doula about what they think's happening, and then just play it by ear. But I think going to the extremes, it's not something that anybody ever likes to talk about, but going to the extremes, so everybody always says, what if something happened to the baby, what if everything went wrong? Well, for me personally as a mom, obviously I don't go in depth discussing it with parents, because it's not that nice really, but it is on my, like, you know, in my information booklet that if anything like that happens, personally for me, I know if it was my baby, this is how I would feel about it. Anything, you know, it's even horrible talking about it, but let's just say you go to the very, you know, worst extremes and say that something did go wrong and baby like passed away, was stillborn or something. For me personally, I would want those photographs of my child. I wouldn't want photographs of me in labour if I was giving birth to the child, but I would want those photographs after. The way I always think of it is, I know a lady actually who I spoke to when I very first started doing birth photography, because she offered to speak to me about it. Somebody whose child was actually stillborn, and she just said to me, she said, could you imagine, and it's something that I've always held with me, could you imagine being the birth photographer at a birth where that happened, and you being able to give those parents the one and only breath that your baby took on this planet? Can you imagine how lovely that would be to be able to give that to those parents for them to keep forever? I think that's, you know, it would be incredibly hard, you know, it sounds really awful and cold, but if you take the parents out of it for a second and talk as photographers, how would you deal with that? I think it would be life-changing for the photographer that was there. I think it would be horrendous and awful, but for me personally, I would care more about what those parents got at that time than anything that I was feeling with, and I think that's, and it's an awful subject, but it is something that you have to think about if you're going to do that.
It's so important. I think it's all in the pre-planning of things, and you're right. People don't want to talk about it, and you don't want to have to bring it up. But if you're being professional about it, you want to cover everything, because I want to know that when I go into that delivery room, that we've discussed what happens at every stage. And there are a couple of things that I always say to my clients, is that you are always in control. If there is any point at which you are uncomfortable, you want me to stop, you can just say, Kate, can you take a minute and go outside, and then they can bring me back in later. It's not like you've engaged my service, so I'm here whatever happens. It's entirely up to them. And also, I should say that the medical staff take precedence. The people that are looking after you and your baby, if at any stage they think it's unwise for me to be there, I am out the door, because it's up to them, because the most important thing is that the health and the welfare of the baby and the mum. That doesn't mean that if there's a problem that I disappear and I go, you know, and I'm not coming back. It just means that I'm going to be sensitive enough to know that I might have to step out for half an hour while they get things sorted or back on track, or that mum just doesn't, she wants to focus somewhere else. So I've had two situations where plans have changed or plans have been different. So the first one was the home birth, and it was that lady that was her third child. She'd had ongoing discussions with the home birth team.
My back's just going to go up. Try and find a plug. Okay, I'll be 2 seconds.
Yeah, so she'd been having ongoing discussions with the midwives, who were incredibly supportive. She was really battling hard to have a home birth. She wanted to have that. The hospital was saying, we really think there are a couple of reasons why you should come in and have this in hospital. So I was already aware that there could be complications and that they might have to be transferred to hospital. But so what happened in that situation? The birth progressed and it was absolutely fine. But they did have to go to hospital very quickly after baby arrived. So what I did then, because I want to tell the full story, is that I came back the next day and I took all of the photographs of, you know, the family all together for the first time then. So there were a couple of photographs whilst they were waiting for the ambulance to arrive and to transfer her. But yes, so to answer Liza's question, you just, knowing what's going on, being in constant contact with the people that you're working for and hopefully the medical staff, you can adapt. And so for that one, I knew that they might have to go, so I just came back the following day to sort of complete the story. The last birth that I photographed was a hospital birth, and I was there 18 hours, and in the middle of labour I went to the cinema to watch Superman, because Mum had an epidural and just wanted to sleep for a couple of hours. So I was very lucky, it was in central London, there was a cinema across the road, I kept my phone on, and enjoyed Superman, and then came back after she'd had a nice sleep. So yeah, so you're adapting to what's happening. But I think you're also asking your question, what happens if there is a problem, you don't get there for the birth, especially if it, you know, professional sort of situation, you're being paid to do it. What I always say is that if for any reason I don't make your birth, if you have a really quick labour or there are problems. Nice of you back, Becky. Then if for any reason I'm not there to capture your birth, everything that you've paid to me gets transferred over into newborn session.
That's a good idea.
You don't lose any money, but obviously we couldn't run a business on a refund sort of situation, because what you have to do as a photographer, as a birth photographer, to accommodate photographing births means you turn work away. You know, you can't. I'm not sure how you could be a wedding photographer and a birth photographer, because you know, immovable things there. So if there's an issue, if there's a reason why I can't be there for your birth, then everything gets transferred over to a newborn session.
Yeah, so we've got that was a great thing, but we had a little controversial thing there from Becky saying you can be a wedding photographer and a birth photographer, and this was another question we got sent before, which was what happens if you're booked in to shoot a birth and then the birth happens on the day of a wedding? What happens then? So
I don't book them at the same time.
If you're saying it's possible, then what would you do in that situation?
I'm saying I said I don't believe you can be a wedding photographer and a birth photographer.
No, but then somebody said, yeah, somebody said,
okay.
Can, yeah. So Becky, how would you deal with that situation then? Because obviously birth you can schedule it in, but you don't know when the baby's coming. So what would you do then?
Because I don't personally, the way that I run my businesses is I don't actually. I don't do a lot of weddings per year. I only do between 10 and 12 weddings per year, and I don't do a lot of births per year. And I work out when I can do births in comparison to when I've got my weddings and vice versa. So if there's like a month's gap between them, and then say the woman ended up going into labour really, really early, she would know that I was at this wedding. But I don't book births when I've got a wedding 2 or 3 weeks before or after, and the same with births. I don't book births when I've got a wedding, and I don't book weddings when I've got a birth. I'm just very like, you know, obviously use my calendar.
You're not. But that's my point, Becky, is that you're not a wedding photographer at the same time you're a birth photographer. If you're that's separate, then this is what I mean. You couldn't be like
full time every single weekend. You couldn't be a wedding photographer that does 40 weddings a year and be a birth photographer. You could, but you'd end up letting a woman down at some point or another. Because you wouldn't let the wedding down, because you would, and I don't know why, but in your head you would think, oh no, I can't because it's their wedding day, and I don't know why, because why would it take precedence over a birth? But personally, with the wedding photographers that I know, that's what I think would happen. That's not saying anything bad against them, but I just think that would happen. It's at the end of the day, I think a woman's so invested in her birth, obviously, that you couldn't do that, because that could create a complete, like, you know, a complete block for her if she really, really desperately wanted her photographer there, and then you know, she rang you up and you were like, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm at a wedding, I can't come. That could have like massive implications for how her birth progressed and stuff. So I don't think, I personally, no, I don't think that you could be full-time, both of them. The reason I'm able to do it is because I'm very kind of picky and choosy about what dates I worked. So
yeah, so it is a good topic to cover, is sort of the pricing of things, because if you're saying, well, I don't do very many weddings a year and I don't do very many births, so I can do both, surely then you have to charge an awful lot of money for a birth, because you know, if you're turning away wedding work, which is, you know, quite profitable, then that's. But like, what budget do people have for births, and so what would you charge, Becky, for someone having a birth?
My prices for my birth photography start at £500, and they only go up to £1,500, so they're substantially less than weddings. But that's because weddings it's an established profession, isn't it? At the end of the day, everybody wants a wedding photographer. You know, you book your wedding and you want to have a wedding photographer, and everybody has them. I think because it is something relatively new, birth photography is. We basically, as photographers, it sounds really awful and it's really bad business sense or anything bit like that, but we're basically like subsidising it until people, you know, until it catches on.
Oh, I'm not subsidising it.
Yeah. I knew you were going to jump in there. Kate quite different.
Here we go. This is the thing. It's an honour. It's a privilege. It's all of that. I adore it. I'm running a business, and I cannot give 110% of the client with me unless I can be sure I've got a sustainable business.
I dispute that. I think that's, you know, that's I dispute that. No, that sounds rude. I dispute that completely. I've just seen Yasmin, your thing going up there. That's not enough. No, £500 is not enough. But I said it started at £500. They only get a slideshow for that. They don't get their images to print, and they don't get their album either. And I think I start at £500 because I want people to book birth photography, and I want to educate people on how much it can make a difference to their birth experience, and how it is empowering and positive, and I want to educate people on that. And the only way I can do that is by having my prices starting off low enough that people can book it that wouldn't be able to afford £1,500. And then basically, as you do that, then those people then have the option that they can buy their albums, or they can buy the USB of images afterwards if they choose to.
Haven't you done enough weddings now, births, to call yourself established?
No, I'm established, but birth photography as a profession in the UK is not established enough.
But how many births have you done?
I've done 15 now. Well, roughly 15.
I would say that qualifies you as an established birth photographer.
It does, but I don't. It does. I don't feel bad about starting my prices at that at all. It doesn't, you know. I
just can't afford. I can't afford to be a loss leader in the industry and establish the industry so that everybody can charge a sustainable rate. That's not to say that £500 is the wrong price. That's not what I'm saying.
No, I said it started at £500. Listen, you know, I'm not saying.
No, hang on. The pricing is always a prickly subject, and it's a very personal one, depending on what your personal circumstances are, what you need to earn, and our financial burdens will be totally different, and our situations will be totally different. So, but what I'm saying is the way that I price, I can't price birth photography to encourage people to do it because of how much work it takes away either side of having a birth. Does that mean I'm not shooting as many births as I would like to? Absolutely, definitely. But I'm just not in a position where I can take on more, refuse other work in order to just get more births on the book. So I have to work much harder at marketing what I do.
I understand what you're saying completely, but it's not. You have to think. It's not exactly like that. It's not you pay me £500 and I come and do your birth and I do loads, and that isn't what I'm doing. What we're basically talking about is me having a starting price for my birth photography that allows more people to do it. That's not to say. Sorry, I'm just reading somebody's comment that's just come up. That's not to say that I don't do births where they come and they book the higher package. But what you're talking about, somebody's just put that it's not enough for rolling out the week's work. However, I don't not work before and after a birth. I don't book out 3 or 4 weeks and not work. I still do my portrait photography. I still do my maternity photo shoots. Everybody in like the 2 weeks leading up to a birth, or the 2-3 weeks, everybody that I work for knows I'm on call for a birth. If the call comes, your photo shoot stops and I go to my birth. And everybody knows that. So I'm still working in the lead up to those births. But for me personally, as other professional photographers, you might not agree with this, but I'm completely 100% happy in my decision that for me personally, I would rather have my entry level more attainable to people. Not so that I can book loads of, because I'm not booking loads at the end of the day, but I would rather have it more attainable so that it can reach more women, so that more women learn about it, they tell their friends about it, and so that it becomes a more widely used service, basically. And that is really, really, really important to me. Really important.
And that's great, and that's admirable. It's just
that's not right for everybody, so you know.
I just need to. We've only got 5 minutes before we need to sort of end this, because I've got triplets downstairs and I need to get back. So we've got other things we need to do as well. We've been on for nearly an hour now, which is great. I knew it was a controversial and exciting.
We need to do another one, Rosie, because we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll have to do a follow-up. So I just want to do one more question, which is from Evie, and we'll go over to Evie, and you can ask your question about location.
I was just wondering if people think location made a difference. So I live in central London, and I can see I would have more people with more money to choose from. And I think someone's in the Isle of Wight. I don't know, would it be harder in a quieter rural area, or not really?
Okay, if we go to Becky.
I was just going to say, I'm based in Cornwall, but I've actually, as of the end of last year, started offering birth photography and like basically across. So I'm in Cornwall, across to London, and then up to the Midlands because I've got bases in both of them. This is my nice diagram. But yes, I do think it makes a difference. Where people are as to how much disposable income they have that they can spend on it, but also as well as to how well known it is. I started off in Cornwall when nobody else was doing birth photography at all. I think if you're in London or you're based in London, there are a lot more photographers picking up on birth photography now, and I think personally, and I don't know if Kate you agree with this, it's going to now spread very quickly, and I think a lot more photographers are going to start taking it up. So I think you will find in London there will be more birth photographers. They will be able to charge more because it will become more popular, basically. I think we should be charging, I don't want, going back to this pricing thing really quickly, I want to make it clear that I don't think £500 is enough if you're going to do it full-time as your only source of income being a birth photographer. And I think it would be easier to work up to a sustainable level of income for just doing birth photography if you were in, say, central London, Birmingham, like major cities, basically.
Yeah, we're going to definitely have to sort of come back and sort of, read these things. Even that comment you were saying, you go up to sort of Bristol, London, and up to the Midlands, and you're based in Cornwall. I think, how on earth, what if you get a false alarm? I've got so many questions that I want to ask. But
I'm on call. I'm on call like you would be if you had hired a maternity nurse, where the maternity nurse either stops with you or stops close by to you. So they pay for my birth photography package, which is only my top package. And if I'm going to somebody's birthday, book me for pregnant, for a maternity photo shoot, birth photography, and for a newborn photo shoot as well. And then I have all my expenses paid for me, so that I'm there for 2 or 3 weeks before you have the baby.
Yeah.
And my expenses for me.
Yeah.
So obviously, that's I've only done 2 of those so far that have been out of Cornwall.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about me stopping in the middle of nowhere. We're talking about where I already have bases anyway. So it's not, I've got family there, and my kids come with me and stuff. So it's not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's just
that's going to be basically where I work while I'm there.
We're going to have a lot of. We've got a lot. Probably enough questions to go through 2 or 3 more sessions easily. And I'm sorry, Hayley, that we haven't sort of I should have asked you sort of more what we had, like what you wanted to ask, but we've had so many, questions coming in. It's been a bit hard to kind of fit them in.
It's been good to hear everyone's experiences.
Yeah, and hopefully it's prepared you a little bit for when you go and photograph your births as well coming up. But yeah, thank you very much everybody for joining us. Really appreciate you all coming, and thanks very much. And it'd be great to meet together again soon, and we'll get a few more people involved as well. Like you were saying, sort of maybe sort of a midwife or something like that would be great. But yeah, thanks very much everybody, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.